Wow, I pressed the new recording button today, Steve. 4 more friggin' podcasts to go, and I'm learning something new. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Forward Maryland. I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Steve Hunt. Good morning, everybody.
Steve, why the fuck are you in your car?
Well, this is another Sunday with the sun having his baseball hitting thing. I don't even know what to call it. But, normally I sit out on a nice park bench and do the podcast from there while he's doing his thing. But it is raining like the Dickens right now. So I don't think it would be good for either me or my computer if I were to be sitting on a park bench right now. So you get me in the car.
All right, so hence my curiosity, because last time I knew, baseball activities, except that they were Major League Baseball games, did not go on in rain like what we're currently experiencing in the land of pleasant living. Why?
Well, he's indoors.
Why is this happening?
He's indoors. It's a hitting camp type of thing that he does in season to stay sharp and that sort of thing, and it's on a Sunday morning. Thankfully the season is over this week, so this is the last time. So that is why it is a Sunday session thing indoors at a hitting facility.
My questions have been answered. I appreciate you, sir.
There it is. We can wrap up now.
That's right. So 3 topics for us today. The first topic, and I think that there's importance in this topic, not just nationally, but state and locally, because it really is a much bigger issue. Mm-hmm. And that is the firings of, or the relievings, I guess, because no one's ever really fired anymore, Steve. They're relieved. They've decided to mutually part ways. They've decided to move forward to new opportunities. But we're talking about the Monday morning massacre of Tucker Carlson from Fox News, and also Don Lemon from CNN, who are, of course, Tucker had his own show Monday through Fridays on Fox in the evening. Don Lemon had actually just finished his morning show at CNN, where allegedly his representation was given the news that he would be leaving. Steve, let's handle Tucker Carlson first, I think, because these are 2 kind of controversial media figures from different sides of the aisle, but both with some similarities. And with Tucker Carlson, personally, my take is good riddance. I mean, and that's mostly because he's not my cup of tea. He'll find another place somewhere. But he was really exposed in that Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit to be really the main purveyor of lies about the 2020 election, and lies that he knew about were lies. And, and he covered it up. And moreover, there were series of text messages which have yet to be disclosed by his former producer that lends itself to misogynistic and other sorts of hateful comments by Tucker Carlson. My personal take is that somewhere in those settlement talks, the fine folks at Dominion said, get rid of this hiney hole is part of the deal, or else no deal. What do you think?
Well, Bill, like you with the good riddance, I will do the obligatory couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, because by all accounts and from some of the emails and text messages and communications, off the air Tucker was pretty much the same as on air Tucker, and I could not stand on air Tucker. So I think the bottom line with Tucker Carlson, and I was watching, there was a guy for the LA Times who broke the story first early in the week. And what he said was interesting. He said that Tucker Carlson, what led to his downfall was he found his way into the more trouble than he's worth phase. And if you look at Fox News, there's a lot to be said about Fox News and Rupert Murdoch. But once you get to that area, you're gone. They pull the trigger with Glenn Beck. They pull the trigger with Bill O'Reilly. They pull the trigger with the man who you could argue built the whole damn thing, Roger Ailes. when you become more trouble than you're worth, Fox will roll you up out of there. And that's,
Right.
I believe, what happened with Tucker Carlson, because you mentioned the Dominion stuff. You mentioned this producer who, oh, by the way, that producer is suing Fox News and Tucker Carlson's production company for what she has called a toxic work environment. And I saw her interview on Nicole Wallace's show the other day, and she's got, as they say, receipts. And in fact, she has turned over, and her attorney verified this, a number of those receipts to Smartmatics, who also has a lawsuit sitting out there that's bigger than Dominion's. So I think with Tucker Carlson, I think the fact that he was becoming a real problem in Fox world, I think the smack that he was talking about, like he called a female executive the C word. He was like really going after like some of the heads at, basically he was making it clear that in his mind, he was bigger than the network. And I believe the network decided to say, no, sir, you are not. And that, I think Tucker Carlson just got fired for being caught being the jerk that we all thought he was.
I don't know if you remember, but Fox was not Tucker Carlson's first national cable gig.
Oh, no, Crossfire, baby.
Thank you. He was on CNN. And personally, I miss Crossfire. I always loved that show. I love all the Washington talking head shows. Didn't see any today, but normally I watch them. And he was on. He would substitute for George Will sometimes against Bill Press. And then when they resuscitated Crossfire and brought in Stephanie Cutter, who, another crush. And
I'm with you there, Bill. Steph Cutter is like that.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And I forget who the gentleman was. It may have been Bill Press still on the left, but I think there was someone else.
But and Begala was there at some point, I think.
It was Begala.
In post-Clinton
then it was against Tucker Carlson and, another person on the right.
Yep.
And that was some good TV. That was some good stuff. And Tucker Carlson was actually a reasoned conservative. I mean, very hard right, but a reasoned conservative. It's interesting that you mentioned the ups and outs at Fox, because you're right. When somebody gets too big for their britches there, they go up and they go out. But what you just mentioned is that it's a hegemony. It's a sequence. It's a legacy of Fox personalities, and in the case of Ailes, executives getting too big for their britches, and they go up and out. I mean, one can make the case that O'Reilly begat Carlson, maybe more like O'Reilly begat Hannity, and they're both out the door.
Yeah.
And if I was Sean Hannity, I'd be calling around to some outlets, seeing if, Truth Social needs a minister of disinformation or whatever, and Laura Ingraham, same way. And Judge Jeanine and Maria Bartiromo, who I still remember as being a fairly cool business reporter on CNBC. I would really be evaluating myself. I mean, hell, that girl Kennedy may want to go back to MTV. I mean, and not introduce videos for 6 hours a day. I mean, all bets are off with this. And you're right about the Smartmatic. I mean, I looked into that. You mentioned it, and I have to say I was a little bit behind the curve on that. That's a $2 billion lawsuit.
Yep.
I mean, and of course, Dominion was originally $1.5 billion. So let's say that they do the same thing and meet in the middle, and that's only $1 billion. Now, like we mentioned last podcast, there's certainly ways that they can think around and get away with, it not being so injurious to them. Mm-hmm. But damn it, $1 billion is $1 billion.
Yes, sir.
But to my point I made last week, they can keep doing that because they're going to make the money back. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked last week. And I think I know the answer, but I'm still going to ask it. Does Fox change anything that they do because of this?
I think my answer last week was no, and it's still no. And if it wasn't no last week, it's damn sure no now. Because if I loved it. By the way, the Kennedy reference was classic. I can't believe you pulled that one out of your hip pocket. That's beautiful, Bill.
I gotta bring some extra value being so damn cranky with the handful of dog poop I took today. Incidentally, some even went into a cut I have on my finger.
Oh!
If I wind up going to the hospital today with sepsis, you'll know why.
But no, Fox has proven to be a machine. And, once upon a time, it's funny, you get all these old stories as you get into like some of the current stuff. In 2001, Paula Zahn, of all people, was like one of the lead anchors at Fox, left Fox for CBS. And they asked Roger Ailes, how are you going to handle losing like your number one anchor? And he said something to the effect of, I could put a trained monkey in this chair and still get ratings. That's how good we are. And
he also said something about just finding just another blonde.
Yeah, which, was kind of a preview to the environment that Hales established and got him rolled up out of there. And, oh, by the way, he was right about being able to find plenty of blondes. But Fox carried on after Zahn left. Everybody said, oh, my God, Glenn Beck has this great audience. What are you going to do without Glenn Beck? Fox carried on. Bill O'Reilly, everybody said, wait a minute. Bill O'Reilly's your number one guy. He's your 8 o'clock guy. How are you going to carry on without Bill O'Reilly? Well, he slid Tucker Carlson into that 8 o'clock slot. Excuse me. They carried on. Different circumstances, obviously, but Megyn Kelly left Fox News, and everybody's like, oh, my God, Megyn Kelly left you. Fox carried on. Fox has officially become a machine that just grinds on and rolls on and makes money. And as long as they find somebody in that 8 o'clock slot that can continue to spread the disinformation, they will carry on because that's what their audience wants. I don't know. And maybe Tucker's different because of his particular style. He was, I think, by Fox standards, pretty darn confrontational and caustic. So maybe there's something there, but so long as they find somebody who's going to give the audience what they want, they'll be fine. I don't think Fox changes a thing. I think, to your point, the messages to the Hannitys, Ingrams, Barteramos, and those guys, watch where you step and don't put your hand in the crap.
Very good metaphor, Steve. But when we were in college, there were these little things called Choco Fingers, where it was like basically fudge frosting, and you stuck your finger in it. And I got another Choco Finger today, Steve.
There you go.
Anyway, on to the point. I believe they've learned nothing as well. And to what we've been saying now for 2 podcasts, they're just going to keep cycling through. They're going to churn out someone else. What's next? The Kayleigh McEnany show, Stephen Miller tonight. Kellyanne Conway's going to get something. Who knows? Or they find somebody out there in the hustings who's going to be a star. Hell, maybe some disgruntled person from CNN, because that's where so many of them came from and where so many of them have gone to. And that leads me to what I think is actually the much more intriguing case, which is Don Lemon. Steve, I'm a big believer that cancel culture happens on both the left and the right. And in fact, I think the cancel culture on the left is much more insidious. And so you take this case with Don Lemon. Yes, so to recap, because some people may be like, what the hell ever happened to Don Lemon? I like Don Lemon. Mm-hmm. Don Lemon, in his 10 to 12 midnight show on CNN, was very well known for taking lots of pot shots and throwing lots of accusations and invective towards the Trump administration. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, he becomes the tri-anchor of their morning show with Caitlin Collins, who's a 28-year-old former White House correspondent, Poppy Harlow, who's a very, very pleasant, very capable newswoman. She and Lemon are, I think, more contemporaries, probably about 10 years younger than we are, Steve. And the reason why I'm saying all of this and the reason why I'm saying their age is because of what got Don Lemon in deep shit for the first time, which is that when Nikki Haley had her coming out party for running for president, he made mention that Nikki Haley is had a lot of room to talk about Joe Biden not being in his prime, because a lot of people think women Nikki Haley's age, Nikki Haley is about our age, Steve, mid to late 50s, mm-hmm. that age is not in their prime. And both of the ladies took some on-air offense to that. And he said, well, look it up on Google. Most people think that women's primes are in their 20s and their 30s and maybe into their 40s, but that's their prime. Wow. Now, I mean, if you're talking about child rearing, I think there is a medical case for that, the state for that. But not when you're talking about having a career as a business person, as an executive, as an elected official, and potentially as president of the United States. And regardless of what you and I may think about how unlikely it is that Nikki Haley will even get to do anything more than look at a postcard of the White House over the next 20 years, she is a former governor of a state, and she is a serious candidate for president of the United States. So that happened. And Don Lemon went to sensitivity training for that. He went away for a couple of weeks, and then he came back refreshed, supposedly, and enlightened, supposedly. More recently, there was to be an interview with Karina St. Pierre, the White House press secretary, who is a LGBTQ woman of color, for those who don't know. And typically, the interviews on the CNN morning show either happen with one of the tri-anchors and the guest, or all three of the tri-anchors and the guest. Well, the White House press secretary politely declined to be interviewed on the morning show unless if it could be guaranteed that Don Lemon would not interview her. Don Lemon, incidentally, is a person of color and is also LGBTQ.
Yep.
So there is a lot of fascinating shit going on here, and I think that ultimately led to the downward spiral that caused Lemon to be let go. Don't know if there's any secrets in the background. Don't know if there's any, analogy to the Tucker text that's there. But clearly there were bigger problems than what was in front of the camera. And I just find this whole liberal cancel culture, it is a cancer. But Steve, I mean, we see it not just nationally, we see it locally. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe in a certain dogma, you're relegated to outsider status. What are your feelings about the Don Lemon case. What have you been ruminating about with this?
Well, a couple of things, Bill. As far apart in the world politically and philosophically as Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson are, rumor is they've hired the exact same attorney to look into their respective matters. So there's a bit of a wicked irony there. The other thing is your point about cancel culture, and we could do a whole podcast on this, but I'm just going to note this for the record. Don Lemon got rolled out in part of because of his comment about Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley last week just came out and said, y'all know if you elect Joe Biden, he's going to drop dead before the end of his term. And we're going to be stuck with a President Harris. And not only was that an age shot at Biden, I'm going to say it straight up. I think that's a racial shot because Republicans have already tried to make Harris the boogeyman of the campaign by saying, you might like Biden, but remember, Harris is out there if Biden drops dead. And guess what happened to Nikki Haley for that comment? Zero. So your point about the cancel culture and how it differs from the right and the left, absolutely true. As far as Don Lemon is concerned, I think Don Lemon got, like you said, whatever the term is for the fact that you got whacked. Don Lemon is no longer there for being Don Lemon. If people did, and you talked about his show, and you're absolutely right. Don Lemon was not afraid to go hard at people on his show. And oh, by the way, his nighttime show for a period of time was the #1 show on CNN, despite being from 10 to midnight. He was drawing better than Aaron Burnett, Chris Cuomo, even at times Anderson Cooper. I mean, his show for a lot of people was much watched TV, especially the first like 30, 45 minutes when he had his Don's Take and some other stuff. So he was that dude, but he was that dude for having a style that was confrontational. And one of the things that adds to the intrigue, Bill, is the changeover at CNN. There's new leadership there. They have made it clear. In fact, there have been reportedly memos out there of we don't go after other news networks. We don't go after other news personalities. We're going to go back to the old school, softer touch, just report all the news, not so much with the hard commentary. And I think the message to Don Lemon was, you can no longer be the guy that got you to where you are today. And I think Don Lemon just made a decision. I'm not going to do that. The Nikki Haley thing was stupid. He shouldn't have never went there. I disagree with him on that. But the other word was he was a bit of a diva, for lack of a better word. And the whole Karine Jean-Pierre thing certainly caused an issue. And then there was another interview with it's one of those, I call him a fringe Republican candidate. The guy might see 2% of the vote. I forget the guy's name, quite frankly, where he was trying to make a point about, and I believe he's Indian, and he was trying to make a point about black people and the civil rights movement. And Don just got straight up in his grill. And Poppy Harlow, who you mentioned, was sitting next to Don, and she was clearly uncomfortable with how hard Don went. I mean, Don basically said you ain't black, so how dare you tell me how black people are supposed to feel and what happened to black people? Probably a bit harder than he needed to go if he's going to be a legit objective anchor. But I think that was the problem. I think Don Lemon decided he's going to be Don Lemon no matter what. And the CNN brass decided, no, Don Lemon, as you want him to be, is not in line with what we want as far as what product we put on the air. And they just said, you know what, you're not going to change. We run this thing, so you're out. So I think that's the bottom line. Don Lemon got whacked for being Don Lemon and refusing to change from being Don Lemon.
Well, I mean, there's those are interesting comments. And I think I mostly agree. And I do know the guy's name. He's a South Asian dude. That's true. Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's a tech billionaire of some sort.
Right.
I forget what apps and websites he's in charge of, but yeah, that guy. I mean, I watch CNN primarily for my national cable news, and I can think of at least one anchor on CNN who's more in your face with the Trumpies, and that's Brianna Keeler, another MTV alumna.
Really?
who is
I
now
didn't know
one of the one of the anchors on. Well, she had her Australian accent back then.
that.
She's
Oh.
Australian, but she speaks American quite well. But you know, she went very hard at the Trumpies when she used to be an anchor of the morning show, and they made her an anchor of the afternoon version of News Central or whatever it's called on CNN. And so far, she's been pretty good in terms of being in line. Don, just not there. And so, you know, to hear you, you know, I agree with you that CNN is a machine. You know, by the way, you did the metaphor last time. I'm going to do it this time. Are they the super machine, the giant machine, the Hulk machine, the dog machine, the Piper machine? You know, any of those great machines from the 80s? We don't know. But I just to me there's something fake about it. Mm-hmm. You know, and maybe it's true of Tucker Carlson too, and maybe this is the problem with cable news in general. Fox has at least admitted that their people are kind of entertainers. I mean, mm-hmm. That's like, and again, I mean, it's not an inapt analogy. It's like Vince McMahon saying that the people in the competitors in the WWE, I mean, they're certainly athletic. They're in good physical shape. They know how to do, you know, they know strength and gymnastics and acrobatics and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. However, the outcomes of the matches and the storylines are all pre-scripted and predetermined. You know, so that's why they call it sports entertainment. Wow. I'm going to coin a phrase in the fifth to last podcast. Are we going to be talking about news entertainment in the future? Are we going to be talking about where a Fox, a CNN, an MSNBC, any of them go, you know what? We want you to come watch us. We're all about the almighty ratings. You want something real? Go to PBS. Go to whatever is the multiple generation successor of Air America or One America. Oh, by the way, Al Franken starting up a left-wing cable network would be fucking amazing.
Oh, Al Franken is that dude. Speaking of cancel culture,
I'd watch that to the nth degree.
Yeah.
But do we come to a time when we now have news entertainment? I mean, we have sports entertainment. You listen to Weather Channel, you know, they do their little programs and all their stuff, and they deliver the weather. That's a little bit weather entertainment. Do we have news entertainment, Steve? I mean, in 5 years, do we come back on and do little editions of this podcast, hopefully via hologram? And is it news entertainment?
Some would argue we're already partway there, because if you take MSNBC and Fox News and you take those networks, the news part pretty much, some would argue, begins at 10 a.m. and ends at 7 p.m. Before 10 and after 7, one could argue legitimately that it already has gone news entertainment. You know, with Morning Joe and Fox and Friends in the morning, and then the evening lineups for both MSNBC and Fox News. You know, I would put forward the idea, Bill, that we're kind of on our way there now. It's just, when does the middle of the day cave in? And, you know, going back to CNN and Don Lemon, you know, CNN, they're clearly trying to become these guys are news entertainment, we're just news. And oh, by the way, CNN has been laying third in the ratings for the three networks for a while, despite I don't know how many shakeups over the past few years of moving folks around here, there, and everywhere. So I would say, Bill, we have that element already out there. It's just a matter of when does it take over the whole thing,
It's a matter of when they admit it.
like McMahon did. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
matter of when they all admit it. Anyway,
yep.
we've and this is a fascinating topic, and I literally just came up with it like about 5 or 7 minutes ago. So I'm gonna do my pat on the back today with my poopy hand,
Well played.
and and let's do our other two topics because I know time is limited. Steve, we wanted to talk about Joe Biden's announcement for re-election. I'm going to let you lead this off. You tell me what you thought about that video and the ensuing last few days. You know, Steve, you can already buy a Biden-Harris yard sign.
Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you, the rollout I thought was good. I thought it did what it needed to do. I find an irony in the fact that, his rollout video and his first campaign ad buy basically talks about freedom, liberty, uh, things that Republicans. I mean, you and I are Bill are the same age. I mean, if I closed my eyes and listened to the narrator and listened to that ad, I would be waiting for Ronald Reagan to show up at the end. I mean, it's just amazing how in politics, because of the MAGA movement, which is, I believe, anti-American, democracy, etc., that Democrats now own freedom, they own liberty, they own patriotism, they own, leader in the free world. I mean, the things that, Bill, you tell me, did you ever think you'd see those days? But I thought the ad was good for a couple of things. One, I like the fact that they leaned into Vice President Harris. I didn't know this until somebody reported it, but in Obama's re-election launch video, Biden showed up 0 times. Harris showed up a bunch of times, and I think that message was, hey, Republicans, if you're going to make her an issue, you know what? We're going to lean all the way in. She is on the team. Y'all take your best shot, and I think that's great. 2, I like the fact that they feature Ketanji Brown Jackson in several frames. It's about damn time Democrats talked about the judiciary as a legitimate campaign issue and one of the consequences of elections. For too long, Hillary Clinton, I know, was shouting it from the rooftops, and Dems weren't listening. So it's about time they said, you know what? Part of what getting elected gets you is better judges who, might follow the law and not be bought off. I mean, I won't even go in on the Supreme Court these days, but oh my God, what's going on over there? And then the third thing, really quickly, I liked about his launch video was they talked about this MAGA thing as a movement, not as a person. We had talked about this after the last campaign, and I think we had Jason on the podcast. We had talked about you beat Trump, but you still got to beat Trumpism. And I think this video talked about that. Did Trump appear in it? Yes, in one frame. Oh, by the way, embracing Ron DeSantis. So I love the message there of these two clowns are one of the same. Don't think it's, you run away from Trump and the message and the ideology changes. He's the same dude, just, a lighter version. So I love how they played that. So I thought it was a good, solid video. Finished the job. I think it's a great theme. And think about this, Bill, and I'll turn it over to you. When's the last time Joe Biden's had a bad week going back to the State of the Union? And it's kind of like boxing. If the champ's upright at the end of the round, it's a good round for the champ. In politics, if you're not having a bad week, you're having good weeks. And I can't think of the last. You had the State of the Union, the trip to Kyiv, the trip to Ireland, the rollout, this recent visit for the president of South Korea. When's the last time Biden's had a bad week for all the talk about him? So dude's on a roll right now.
I for interest of time, because I know your son's going to be coming in about 5 minutes and go, Dad, when are we leaving? And I was late today to start, and I apologize for that. But I agree with everything you said, and I'll add a couple things, and then we can go on to the next. This is the time that an administration should be hitting its stride, early into the third year. And right now, of course, shit can happen. But both the Biden administration and the Biden campaign are hitting on all cylinders. And, you know, to use a sporting analogy, they're doing it one day at a time, 1 week at a time. You know, you think back to the Trump administration and, oh, we're going to have this week, and then we're going to have that week, and then we're going to have the other week. And they never had that week because the president was going off spewing about trash. That's not what this man is doing. This man is absurdly disciplined, you know? And of course, things can happen. Unexpected natural disasters, Ukraine, so God forbid some terror attack, you know, China gets frisky. Of course, God forbid something happens with his health. But wow. I mean, that video was a great example of a terrific Rose Garden strategy. And I agree with you about it hitting all the attacks. And I'm just going to say what's been said before. It plays into Biden's narrative and what he says. Do not compare me to the Almighty. Compare me to the alternative. And the alternative is one pile of dung or the other pile of dung. There's no, you know, Asa Hutchinson, thank you for playing. You're already out. You're a trivia answer now. Thank you. Nikki, good luck. Vivek, good luck. There is some African-American guy who just announced. I don't even know who that guy is. Good luck. Yeah. Pence, really good luck to you. Say hi to Mother for us. But it's one of those two. I still say that DeSantis is gonna go for it. You, I know, disagree with me on that. But yes, the picture of the two of them hugging was just precious.
Yeah, it was well played.
And Trump's just sitting there cackling. He's wearing his white Ray-Bans. He's got his aviators on, and he's cackling.
Yeah. I know. And by the way, the video also took time to drop in Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I also think is about time you have some up because. And I would say
the last thing I'll say on this before the last topic is he leaned into the age thing. He also leaned into the age thing. He didn't just lean into the vice president, but if you watched his video next to the video from 4 years ago, his speech was a little off. And he doesn't give a shit. He's Joe Biden. He just doesn't care. The man's 80 years old and he doesn't care. This is what I love about this man. He's just, I'm me, I'm real. You can think I'm bland, but I know better. Bland is my brand. I don't give a shit.
Well, we will be talking about that next week because I know, Bill, we have a topic that we already have teed up for next week. And trust me when I say this will come up next week.
Okay. Last thing, Steve, we both have Ravens gear on today because for all you pumpkin heads out there in viewer and listener land who's going, Lamar's going to leave the Ravens. I had 260 million reasons to tell y'all you're ham and eggers. Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, signed a 5-year, $260 million contract, $185 million of it guaranteed, $4 million short of the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history, and the whole total contract makes him the highest paid player in the whole NFL. Steve, it's more money than I thought he was going to sign for, but knew it was going to happen. I knew it all the time. What do you think? And what do you have to say out there to the prognosticators who didn't know what the fuck they were talking about?
Well, I think they had no idea what they were talking about. First of all, look, Lamar Jackson was not going anywhere else but Baltimore. That period, hard stop. You know, he made an attempt to get, that Deshaun Watson 230 guaranteed deal. That wasn't going to happen. I think that if anything, Ravens fans, quite frankly, the Ravens, quite frankly, Lamar Jackson, we should all look up I-95 and say thank you, Philadelphia, because once the Eagles signed Jalen Hurts to his deal, which was 5 years, 255 million, I think it was 180 million dollars guaranteed, that set the market. I mean, it was really, rinse and repeat, because if that's what Hurts was going to get, Lamar, the Ravens pretty much knew what was going to go down. My only surprise was that he got more than Hurts. I thought that maybe the Ravens would say, the guarantee is going to be, I think it's 185, which is short of Kyler Murray's, but the total value, we'll put you at number 2 behind Jalen Hurts, who actually went to a Super Bowl. But that cost the Ravens, quite frankly, in real dollars, not a hell of a whole lot, because it was just on the back end of the contract. I think the guarantee was not going to change. And I think the deal represented a good compromise. I mean, I think the Ravens had reportedly offered a $200 million guaranteed deal. I think the full value was, I think, 240. So the Ravens gave up some money on the back end to get it to, 260.
It was 260, Steve.
Okay. But I mean, the Ravens gave up money on the back end. Oh, but I mean, the offer that was reported out there before this one, I think was like
yeah, that one was that. Yes, you're right.
So they gave up some money on the back end to get it to 260, but they got some money back on the guarantee because it's down to 185. I think it's a fair deal. I think it is a market deal. You could argue whether or not Lamar is worth it or not. I would tell you have no idea what you're talking about and how the market works. But yeah, Hurts set the market. The Ravens swooped in very quickly and said, okay, that's the market, Lamar. Let's play within it. Lamar got a reality check and said, I ain't seeing Deshaun money, so let's get the best deal I can get. And they closed the door. And oh, by the way, the Ravens have had a good couple of weeks. I mean, they signed Odell Beckham Jr. They drafted Zay Flowers, which I thought was a great pick in the first round. I think I'm going to say he's a better version of Hollywood Brown. And with the Lamar deal, they've not broken down the cap numbers, but I'm going to assume next year's cap number will be below the 32 under the non-exclusive franchise tag, which means you can short some other positions like quarterback. Maybe Marcus Peters comes back. Yasin maybe comes in. I know there are a couple of names out there, free agents. So you have your quarterback. You've got the flexibility to now build your roster. And, somebody was rattling off the AFC right now, and we could, again, another podcast. The AFC is loaded, man. I mean, you could name, 6 to 8 teams that legitimately could end up in the Super Bowl. I mean, it is just insanely good. Meanwhile, the NFC is Philly and a bunch of, to your words, ham and eggers. But in that loaded AFC, most people are saying now with Lamar in tow and some of the other moves, the Ravens are as good as anybody and have as good a shot of it as anybody of getting it done. So it's all good.
I think again for next podcast, we probably need to talk about the totality of the Baltimore-Washington sports scene, because there are some other really good things happening in Baltimore. DC may have a team win a game today that means that they're competing for a championship the following week or in 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens with that. But I do think that that's also a topic for the next podcast. But I will say also, I agree with everything you said. I think the Ravens, again, have proven that they win the offseason. And to all the haters out there, it's fun to be in the mix every year. One of these years, we're going to break through and win it. I think this year, and yes, injuries are a concern. Health is a concern. But we have as good a shot as anybody for sure. So more on that to come next week. Anyway, we have reached the end of our podcast. We have already telegraphed topics for our next podcast. And Steve, I'm going to add one to them. Next week, there will be big news about one, if not all 3 of my books.
Nice.
Very big news.
Nice.
Regarding publication and availability at retail outlets near you.
If that ain't a reason to tune in, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is, because I've read the books and very excited about their launch. So um, can't wait to hear about how that's going to be put out there so that folks can get, as I said before, not just a history of your podcast, not just a history of you, but it really is a history of Howard County through your eyes. And so if you're into Howard County stuff, even into Maryland stuff, because you go beyond the borders of the land of what you call milk and honey, there's some good stuff in there. So can't wait to hear what the next plan is.
Well, and I will take that a step further. For those of you out there who are not in Maryland, and I know there are some of you, and even not in the U.S., the story of the Howard County community is the story of your community. And I'm sure you could read about people and characters and events and places and things, and you can come up with, oh, yeah, that's just kind of like blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to be like Baker's Canyon back home, but it can be like something in your community. So there is value there, and we will talk more of that next week. And big plans are happening. Well, they're going to be happening in about 30 seconds from now after we get off the phone for a final guest to the podcast and our last episode. So, Steve, any last words?
No, sir. Good stuff. A lot to come. I know, we're going to try to pack a lot into these last few podcasts to, go out with a bang and not be confused with the Diamond Dallas Page bang. But, we're going to do this thing, man.
Oh, we're going to go out with a bang. All right. That's for sure. The only question is, what type of incendiary do we use? Anyway, everybody, for Steve Hunt, my name is Bill Woodcock. You have been watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.